Greetings, I am Shawn Redman, aka the cheesily named Darth Shawn, and this is my first video in about a week, but we got a new episode of Rebels, and introduced the new Inquisitors. Episode 3 of Season 2, always 2 there are. Last time, at the end of the whole Captain Rex series we got in the first 2 episodes, we saw the revelation of Fifth Brother being his shuttle landing on the Star Destroyer, and so we knew he was going to start hunting the rebels. Well, we got both him and Seventh Sister both being introduced and attacking in this episode, as Ezra, Sabine, Zeb, and Chopper are sent to this old abandoned medical station to find supplies and whatnot for the Resistance, thanks to intel from Captain Rex's all the information he brought in. Well, they go. It had a very nice horror setup, and that was really cool about the episode, was Dave Filoni and crew did a great job with horror in the Clone Wars. There's zombie episodes, there's monster episodes, there's creepy episodes. I think one of the episode where the early season 1 of the Clone Wars, where the clones and Plo Koon are trapped in a pod in space, actually has a lot of horror elements too. The we might not be able to breathe much longer was a lot of horror elements, so that's not unfamiliar to the Clone Wars. But this I really felt was the first time we kind of got horror elements to Rebels. It's not quite to the extent sometimes of the Clone Wars, but we got them. The dark medical bay, the creepiness of Seventh Sister and Fifth Brother kind of tracking them down, the droids that Seventh Sister has. She has these probe droids that are like her pets, and they're creepy. They're really creepy. They're moving through, and they do something to Chopper that really isn't revealed in this episode. Possibly bug him. We'll see if that plays later on. But as a whole, this episode really worked as it built. It built and built and built. It started off kind of slow as they got into the medical bay, and then just built into it, and then a little bit, and then a good little climactic finale as Zeb rescues them. As a whole, it's a very good episode. I think it's not a great episode compared to some of the Inquisitor episodes of the last season, or what we saw with Vader at the beginning of the season, or even with Tarkin. But I think we're going to get a lot more from the Inquisitors going forward. It's a very good episode, but it wasn't quite as great as some of the previous had been. One thing that was really cool about this episode was, as Seventh Sister is revealed and Fifth Brother comes in, we noticed that they weren't actually working together, and that you start to see there's a hierarchy of these Inquisitors. They reveal and actually call the Inquisitor of the last season the Grand Inquisitor. So he was the head, he was the top of the Inquisitors. Now that he's gone, all the other Inquisitors are kind of jockeying. They're trying to battle and become, I'd assume, the next Grand Inquisitor. And you kind of see that when Seventh Sister stops Fifth Brother, and he's like, that's my kill, and she tells him to do other things, and they kind of are battling each other. So instead of kind of the thought process that these are 2 people working together for the ultimate goal, they're kind of 2 people working on their own goals, but they will interact together. And that was kind of cool, and I really like this, because it seems so easy to just be like, well, we're gonna one up the last season, we're gonna have 2 Inquisitors, that's how we're going to improve it. Instead, they've just gone the idea of building them as characters and letting the story work through it. And I really like that. And I appreciate how the story group and how Filoni and how these people have put together the Inquisitors. And while I don't know how much we're going to get actually in the Inquisitor hierarchy in this season, whether that's going to be something that's in Rebels or a later novel or a comic or something that comes out in the canon, it's very interesting that we're starting to see this, and what exactly Vader and the Empire were doing with the Force-sensitive kids. Because clearly there are still going to be Force-sensitive kids across the galaxy, and I think we're starting to see that a lot of them became Inquisitors, or at least, the ones that they chose became Inquisitors. And that's a cool thing, and I hope we get more backstory to not only Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister, but the Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitors that we may see or we may not going forward. But that's probably the best thing that comes from this episode, is knowing there is a hierarchy. Something I said after episode 1 was I was not sure how much Zeb was going to be a major character going forward. He's obviously a part of the crew. He's important, but it's more about the little things in this. Well, we actually got a fairly important Zeb episode in this. Not in that we got any backstory on Zeb or anything more important to his, his behind his story, his growth on that. But we got that who Zeb is, and that he is kind of the guy that's going to probably hold the crew together in a lot of ways. He has a chance to run away and maybe alert the fleet. Instead, he wants to stay and save his friends. And he does save Sabine and Ezra. And it's very well done to let Zeb be such a major character still, because Zeb is a great character. Steve Blum does a fantastic job voicing him. He has so much emotion in the way he is voiced and the way he is done, and it was really cool to see Zeb not just be comic relief in this episode, which he was at times. He fell over, got knocked around, said silly one-liners like he does, but also be a very important part and continue to be integral when it comes to the entire crew. The other thing that was very, very small in the beginning and a little bit at the end, and I from what I understand is going to really go forward, is we're still seeing that tension between Kanan and Captain Rex. It's not like the lack of trust anymore. It's more of Kanan doesn't want to be a soldier, and he said that, that was in the Siege of Lothal. A lot of that was like, I'm not a soldier. I'll help and I'll do things, but I'm not a soldier. Whereas Rex is coming from, we need to make sure we're all, we're soldiers and we're treating it this way. And it's starting to how they interact with Ezra. And scenes from the next episode and the previews that we have are that it's going to be kind of Ezra going off on his own in the next episode. And I think maybe a little bit of that push, because he's going to have these two sides, because Rex sees a lot of Anakin Skywalker in Ezra. He does, and it's very, very clear, and that's been said before, that, Ezra's willing to grab the dark side sometimes as he's learning and things like that, whereas Kanan is trying to train him strictly along the Jedi way, and, as Kanan is going across his own journey of becoming a true Jedi that he never was. And so it's kind of that interesting dynamic, and I want to see how it plays out and how Rex and Kanan, whether they've fully become good friends throughout it or whether they continue this back and forth for the whole season. It'll be very interesting to see. But some of the minor characters are what really made this episode good. Finally, you can't not talk about this episode and not mention how wonderful Sarah Michelle Gellar is as Seventh Sister. She brings just an intensity to it that is hard to do. They did a lot of work on her voice, because they said it's been put through a lot of things. It's got a kind of mechanical, mechanized sound to it. It's very, very menacing. But there's also some very interesting things going forward. Either I'm not entirely, there were a lot of rumors that she might be Mara Jade, or a character like Mara Jade from the expanded universe that had been there. I've never really bought into that, but I can see that in her. I could see where if she meets a character, maybe it's Ezra, maybe it's someone along the line who is truly, maybe kind of, why I say Ezra, because Ezra has used the dark side before, but also wants to do good. It's possible somebody could, she could switch sides. I think there's also a lot of menace in her and a lot of just evil beyond it as well, that maybe, the Vader aspect, we know there's good in him, but he's this menacing figure. So it's very interesting how they play Seventh Sister, because they can go either way. Will they kind of, toe that line down the middle? Will she go super, super evil? Will there be elements of her maybe being possibly better in the future? There's a good questions that'll be answered in the future at this point on what they will do. But Sarah Michelle Gellar has done a great job with this character as far as we've seen, and I look forward to the growth in the scene of Seventh Sister throughout this season. In the end, it's a very good episode. I think last week's episode was better, and I think the week before had more setup. But at the same time, I think this is still a very strong episode, and I think this season is already building and definitely showing the darkness side of things, that it is trying to be the Empire Strikes Back of Rebels, trying to be that darker side of things. And you see that in Kanan's reactions, in Ezra's reactions, in the Inquisitors, and just in how some of the lightheartedness is then countered with darkness. And it's very interesting to see. And so I look forward to how it goes. As a whole, this episode was very good, but I think I still liked last week's a little bit more. So what do you guys think? Am I wrong in thinking last week's was better? Am I right? Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments below. As always, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I am Shawn Redman, aka the cheesily named Darth Shawn, and may the Force be with you. Always.